I kicked myself for not seeing that coming. I honestly should have seen that coming. The moment they said they were going to go back in there and play everything out the same way, I should have seen that coming. Because I remember way back there, it said, Shiori said, I looked into your memories at that point and knew who you were. So when they were going to replay that whole scenario, the fact that Ushio gave them all the memories, literally handed them the keys. And I don't know, like I said, I get why Hizuru would not see that. Because, yes, Ushio gave them the memories of the previous loop, but none of the memories that Hizuru had. None of the whole situation and the conversation that Hizuru had with Shiori, where Shiori told her, I looked into your memories the moment we were in that room, when we were in that girl's room. So Ushio giving her those memories, she wouldn't have known. And technically, yes, Ushio and Shinpei wouldn't have known either. But yeah, that sucks. It's like one of those aspects of like, here's the reset, everybody's on the same page, but they're overly prepared to the point to their own failing. Because yes, Ushio giving them everything, all the information they need, all it takes is one snapshot. One of these people in this area, in this little group, besides Nezu, obviously, because he cannot be copied again, everybody in that group right there is a danger to the entire mission. So, it was very, very, very interesting. Like I said, I should have seen it coming, but yeah, that was a absolute failure. That was probably one of the quickest loops we've had so far, because it was literally okay, let's go to Shiori, bam, mission fail, reset. So, that was good. I would assume at this point from now on, depending on what happens in this backstory stuff they're getting into, Shinpei is going to be like super cautious about who he gives information to, because who he tells, again, is basically a threat to the entire mission. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. I just found that really, really interesting. But yes, we're on the 5th loop starting out the episode, and yes, they divulge everything to Hizuru. The only thing of new, because they did a lot of kind of semi-recapping in this episode, like very hidden recapping, but it's really getting everybody up to page. And we do have this point where Nezu does point out the fact that that big, gigantic, flat shadow behind Heine is actually Hiroko, which, yes, we can kind of assume that. I did get a kick out of the fact that the subtitle said the flat body behind, and I'm like, which one? Which one? I know, flat is justice joke. I'm sorry, I had to do it. But they did get into a little bit of theorizing on the idea of Shiori being a sort of break off of Hiroko. The fact that Hiroko is kind of stuck here as Heine. She cannot move because she doesn't have enough energy, but they're still able to kind of create a projection of themselves going around. That was kind of what I was mentioning in the last episode, this theory on the idea that Shiori's shadow is sort of a creation from Heine. But does it make it weird that she's able to remotely control her and run her around the entire village? It was interesting that Shinpei at this point pretty much foreshadows their demise, and the idea that they can't just rush to Heine, they need to they gotta figure out how to deal with this shadow first. But then that's when they come up with the idea that Ushio could erase Shiori, the Shadow Shiori, using the thing that she kind of discovered in fighting against Heine in the previous reset. Before they go to Shiori, we do get a brief scene of So confronting his father, wanting to talk to him, but then his father like, no, I ain't got no time for you, and Mother kind of speaking up that we know is a shadow at this point. But this is where we get a brief shot of the father speaking to somebody on the other side of the phone. I didn't really catch the voice, but it does seem like somebody that does call Heine mama. So it's obviously one of her children. Again, could this be the four-armed creature? Again, his voice sounds very different, but he could be in a human form versus that. At this point, I'm starting to theorize it might be Katakiri. Katakiri, I think at this point, is the only person we haven't got a full glimpse of, and yet he's going to be very... I really do believe that Katakiri is going to be super tied in with the shadows, because he's a part of the family that has the shrine for this entire goddess. So yeah, I really do kind of, my point right now, I'm kind of theorizing that Katakiri is going to be like a human form that the forearm takes upon itself. I might be misremembering, but I want to say that Hizuru did test Katakiri's shadow at the funeral, or maybe that might have been Alan. I know that Alan at that point did eventually get snapshotted and then went back in there to kill himself, but that... I don't remember that. I want to say that she tested Alan, and then they went and talked to Katakiri, and we didn't get to see her test Katakiri. So again, I'm still thinking that Katakiri is going to be the forearm. But this is where we do get a clarification through this conversation that yes, they are aware that Shinpei showed up. Hizuru randomly showed back up, talking about how he knows that they failed to erase the Shadow Ushio, but really does explain at this point why they were so dead set on going after, Mio, Ushio, and Alan. They were looking for Ushio. It makes it very clear at this point that nothing's just random. It's not that they randomly chose Ushio's family to go after, it's just that Ushio was his oddity, and they had to figure out where she's at, so they thought that Mio or Alan could know where she's at, which we did get an idea from with the whole scene with Shiori turning Alan into a shadow. But there's one very interesting note at the end of this conversation. This does hint at the idea that, the Hishikata family is not terrible. He says that he has to go, and he's like, yes, go return to mommy. Like, he's being very belittling to this person that he was just talking to. Again, I'm using you for a purpose, but I don't really trust you. Like, I had this thought process that Hishikata is going to be doing this because not only the fact that they're, making sure that his mother is a shadow copy and stays around, but additionally waiting for that moment that they could possibly control or get rid of the shadows. Again, similar to Tokiko, she's doing it for this purpose, but she's not doing it because she wants to benefit Haine. This is where we get to the very unfortunate scene at Shiori's house, which again, I should have seen coming. But there is one little statement here that kind of precursors what we get later on, and that's when, you have Hizuru giving Ryunosuke this whole update on what they're going to be doing. You're going to play out the same situation. You're going to do the same thing, and it's going to rush out there, and then we're going to capture it. But she also includes this idea that she stole everything from us. She stole Asako, stole you, everybody from me. Which, yes, technically at the very end, we start to get into with the time loop, going back in time. But yeah, this did not turn out well. I did like, just before this, everything went down terribly, this brief little thing that Nezu says that, what is Ushio, like a Precure transforming into different things? And they're like, oh, you know what Precure is? He's like, yeah, my grandchildren mess with it. So it gives a little bit of a little soft spot of Nezu that we get to see, which I do appreciate those little added things. That this isn't just some gruffy old man, that he does have a family, or possibly had a family. But yeah, this is the point which everything kind of plays out normal. Ryunosuke goes up there, beats him over the head with the sledgehammer, but then yes, unfortunately, comes crashing out of the window, losing an arm, and saying, this is not the date that you remember. And then that's when the forearm comes out and smashes her head, which, yes, this all went terribly. And like how Shiori comes out and sticks out her tongue, like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. But again, this is where it kind of plays that whole scenario. Ushio gave her all the information, basically. Gave Ryunosuke and Hizuru all the information about what happened in the previous reset. And that moment that she found out by taking a snapshot of Hizuru or Ryosuke, that's when Shiori knew everything. That's when Haine knew everything at that point. Everything that happened. This is similar to the whole situation with Shinpei. Because they can scan Shinpei, they can see every reset. So again, the less information you can give other people, and that was kind of the mindset that Hizuru had initially. Hizuru did not want to let Shinpei know anything about her history because she knew that if he got copied, they would know. And it was almost like one of those things where I would have assumed that Hizuru would have said, you shouldn't have shown me that. Like, Ushio, if you ever do this again, do not show me that, because it becomes a threat to the mission. Memories and knowledge is the best but the worst tool in this entire show, in this entire story. But we also do get to note, which we could have assumed at this point, that Haine, in marking Shinpei, she knew where he was at. So again, it's not just the fact that Ushio gave them all the knowledge. Haine also knew where he was at. May not have known why she knew where he was at. Well, she can probably think, well, I probably marked him, but I'm not sure when I marked him, but I know he's here. But getting that knowledge from Hizuru was the death knell. But yeah, everything goes nuts. Ushio goes to finish off Shinpei so that resets, but also she tries to take an image of data from the four-armed beast. Now, she specifically says that I don't want to scan too much of him. I might lose myself, because I think the idea is that she's one of the type of shadows that when you scan something, you have to become it. Not one that can scan multiple things and create multiple copies like we've kind of mentioned before, which is probably Shiori/Haine/Hiroko. But as they're going back in time once again, and they're obviously contemplating the fact that they just brutally failed, Ushio does note that when she scanned the four-arm beast, she's seen nothing. That there's no data there, which is a big, huge question mark. I would probably put it more the theory that it's probably because either he's a projection from another location, like this is a shadow that can go anywhere from a host point, and thus whatever it's moving around, it's an empty shell. or she doesn't understand the data. That goes in the whole theory of these being like scans of aliens or demons. Maybe she scanned it and she just doesn't understand it. And this is when things get really crazy. Now, I kind of assumed this would happen eventually, and I probably should have connected it as well to the whole situation with the first reset. The first time Shinpei reset, he appeared next to Mio when she was holding Shiori and they were trying to resuscitate Ushio the day that she died. And this is a similar situation where we go all the way back, 14 years ago, apparently the moment that Ryunosuke died. Because we see Hizuru, we see Ryunosuke, they're all going to the Alan's restaurant. We get to see Shinpei's parents, and they're all having fun, celebrating this anniversary for this restaurant. And I kind of feel a little bit let down by this scene, because the moment that Shinpei sees his mother, he doesn't really react. Like, no reaction whatsoever. Probably because he was too young, that he doesn't remember his parents. Now, he does say, I remember their demeanor, they're talking the same way. He does remember his parents. It's not as if he was too young that they're just strangers to him, technically. He does know them, but yet when he first sees his mother, he doesn't react, which I thought was like kind of, that's weird. I would think that he'd be a little more emotional than that. But yes, seeing them talking, he does, recall their demeanors and stuff like that. But no, then we cut over to Hizuru, Ryunosuke, and Asako, where they're talking about Hizuru not being very good around other people, and then Ryunosuke bringing up, oh, well, she has a friend. They're like, wait. We only have like 20 kids our age in our school in this area. Who do you know? Oh, well, I'll take it to them. And so they go all the way up to the Hishikata old clinic, and then yes, that's where we kind of get an indication. Yeah, this is Haine, which she did mention in the past loop. In the 5th loop, Hizuru does mention that Haine was her friend. That woman was my friend. So it was kind of given that was going to be Haine that showed up in the window. But yes, they're all standing there waiting. Ryunosuke and Asako give up and they go to leave. And that's when we see, yes, Haine showing up in the window at the clinic. So yeah, it's a bad spot to leave it. Everything's going to go down at that point, because we do know that she did claim that Haine killed Ryunosuke. And so it's going to be a thing where, how do we get from this point where, Hizuru is saying that Haine is my friend and she's standing there with her, to the point that Ryunosuke is going to be taking Haine's eye, running off with it, getting killed. Obviously, Hizuru knows about it and gets upset about it. There's so much stuff that's going to happen after this point that I'm very curious about, and it's going to reveal a lot of interesting stuff. And it's kind of one of those things where we finally get a perspective of all this stuff, because again, I don't think Hizuru would ever tell Shinpei that information because he's afraid that Shinpei would know. But at the same time, like I said earlier, the fact that Shinpei is seeing this right now is actually dangerous, because he's going to get the information to know what Hizuru is, and thus somebody else can get that information. Haine can get that information eventually and know who Hizuru is. Technically, Haine knew because she took the data from Hizuru in that bedroom, but still, we don't want her to go there no more. We don't want Hizuru to go to that room ever again. That's obviously a fail, no matter what, going straight to Shiori. But yeah, it's it just gets better and better every single episode, and I cannot wait for the next week. Next week's gonna be great. This is something that I've been waiting to see for quite a while. I got Tokuko's answers. I now getting Hizuru's answers. Eventually, we'll get Katakiri's answers, but it's crazy. And yes, technically based off the new OP, which, soft spoilers to people that don't like spoilers and OPs. Technically in the OP, we are getting a small, very, very brief glimpse that we're going to get into Haine at some point, which I kind of assume we were eventually, or Hiroko. We're going to eventually get into Hiroko. And that's going to be, I'll be interested to see how that all plays out and how that ties in with the current story. I'm going to assume, because anime, some tear-jerking story about humankind being, because they did mention the idea that the army, when they kind of occupied this island, they destroyed this entrance to the cave. And so it would only be assumed that they may have had a conflict. Remember back when we had Ushio and Shinpei and So first going down that tunnel, they seen a body that was removed a long time ago, kind of showing there was a conflict there. So it's only an assumption that the army came in there to Hiroko, attacked her, and then she fought back and probably never liked the humans after that point. Also, one last thing that I took down as a note, Ushio did mention that the four-armed shadow, when she scanned it, it smelled like Haine. So, again, not sure how that's going to tie together. Again, I'm going to assume that it's just because he's a direct descendant of Hiroko, maybe a child of his. Again, going back to the whole phone conversation that Hishikata had and saying, go back to mommy. So anyways, that's my thoughts on episode 13. That was a long video. I'm sorry. I'm sure some people really like the fact that I just keep blabbing on about episodes. Some people are like, just get to the point. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment. Let me know if you're okay with them being this long. Let me know if this is good to be this long. But anyways, as always, if you have not already and you're just new to this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, episode by episode impressions of certain shows, including this one. Additionally, if you want to support us more, we have a Patreon link and a tips link in the description below. We definitely appreciate everybody that supports us, and y'all take care.